Bitter Pill.
All right. Well, good morning. Happy Sunday. It's good to be back. I've been back for the last couple weeks, but it's good to be back teaching again. And I just want to say, for those of you who might not recognize me because of this thick and luscious mustache, it is I, your pastor, Craig Cackley. Let there be no mistake. And so just be forewarned, there may be some raw masculinity emanating from the stage this morning, maybe more so than normal. It's a side effect of the mustache. Can't control it. And even though they don't let me back in the kids' areas anymore, it's the price we pay for style. So we're unashamed. No. Hey, can we put our hands together and welcome our church family attending online? Love you guys. Thanks for enduring my shenanigans. Thanks for tuning in. Also, one more time, we love to clap here. Can we honor all of our guests that spoke over Summer Vibes? Can we just thank them? Huge thanks to Dan, Alex, Cassie, Calvin. Wow, you guys heard some phenomenal communicators over the last month. And so I'm so grateful to each of them for pouring into our church. So listen, we are going to dive right in this morning. We got a lot of ground to cover. And we are in week number 16. Say 16 with me. Of our series, Bitter Pill. You may be wondering, will this series ever end? And the answer is yes, when I die. So then, okay, we got a laugher up in the front row. I like you. All right, this is going to be fun. No, in 2 weeks, we have a brand new series that's happening August 21st. It's going to coordinate with the child dedications, and we're doing a 4-week series entitled How He Heals Us, teaching through the story of Lazarus. And so if you or someone you know is just going through a really difficult time, a trial, life has just put you through the ringer, do not miss that series. In fact, we're going to kick it off with a bang. In week number 1 is what happens when in our lives we walk through trauma and God seems like nowhere to be found. How do we respond? And so it's going to be a powerful and very poignant message series, so you do not want to miss. All right, so we're going to dive in today, and as we continue this journey, teaching through the Gospel of John, the reality is before we move forward, we have to first look back. Before we can understand and appreciate the depth of what John is wanting to show us about Jesus, we have to first look back and understand the series of events that took place leading up to this moment. Because remember, when we read the Bible isn't meant to be experienced as these little vignettes where we can pick and choose whatever we want. I think it was John Piper who said, it's meant to be experienced like pearls on a string. That everything is interconnected, that even these small individual parts are a greater whole, and each one isn't just building upon itself, it's building towards something. And so we have to keep that in mind this morning. So to refresh our memory, the significant event that took place in John chapter 9 was that for the first time in human history, a man that was born blind was healed, which is pretty cool. Never happened before. So Jesus heals this guy, and the religious leaders at that time, known as the Pharisees, they don't know what to do because they believe that Jesus is demon-possessed and of the devil, and Jesus is like, Uno reverse card. Actually, Satan is your father, and you're the worst. And so there's like this constant tension. They don't know what to do. And so they cast this man out of the synagogue, which essentially means that they cut him off from society. He becomes a social pariah. And we were talking about how Jesus, he seeks the man out because that's what he does. He seeks out outcasts. He seeks out the marginalized. He seeks out the foreigner and the overlooked and those that society has cast out. Jesus finds him. And he meets this man in his moment of need. And to show him that he's not just some kind of like gypsy miracle worker, that he's not just some elaborate magician, but rather he holds the authority of all of heaven and earth at his fingertips. Even though Jesus has already healed the man physically, his healing is incomplete. And he forgives the man's sins. And he heals him at the deepest level, the level of his soul. And it's because of this healing, the chapter ends, John chapter 9, by Jesus and the Pharisees going back and forth at one another. And it's directly following Jesus' critique of the religious leaders that he makes the statement that we're going to study today. And in many ways, the message today is really directed at spiritual leaders. Because in modern day language, when it came to the blind man, the church had failed him miserably. And so what Jesus does is he finds this man, and essentially what he's doing, he's saying, listen, you know what it's like now to sit under bad leadership. You know what it's like to experience a bad shepherd. Now let me show you a good one. And it's on that backdrop, it leads us to our text this morning, John chapter 10, starting in verse number 1. Jesus says this, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, that anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep." So Jesus here, he's going to go into kind of like analogy mode, and he starts talking about shepherding. Why? Because shepherding in this day and age was very popular. It was a common vocation. And what they would do is the shepherds would lead the sheep out into the fields, and at night, they would return back to these communal sheep pens. I think we have a picture of this, a very highly sophisticated non-clip art picture of this. And as you can kind of see, oftentimes like multiple families would share these communal pens. And in order to protect their assets, what they would do is that they would, to keep the sheep safe from whether that was thieves and robbers or other animals that would cause harm, they would have a hired hand that would sit, sometimes even the shepherd himself would sit at the entrance of the sheepfold and keep guard overnight. And the point that Jesus is making is really simple. That you know who belongs with the sheep simply by where they enter into the fold. And we understand this concept. The same is true of our houses, for example. People who walk in your front door, 99% chance they're legit, okay? But if you're driving down the street and you see some fool climbing up a drain pipe, call the police. That ain't right. That's a sus, as the teenagers are saying these days. Am I right? With your TikToks and your Game Boys. Sus. Something's up. It's a little shady. It's not right. This is what Jesus is saying. So in this example, so hip, so modern. Sorry. Like, you're embarrassing me, Dad. So in this example, inside the sheep pen are the people of God, and they have a shepherd. Verse 3. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. Because they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Now, sheep, if you didn't know this, are in fact quite stupid animals. But this is real, that a sheep has the ability to recognize the voice of their shepherd, and they will only follow that voice. As I was studying this week, I found something interesting, that shepherding in the Middle East, where our story takes place, it varies quite dramatically from shepherding in other parts of the world, like, let's say, Britain or Australia. See, in those places, the sheep are led and driven from the back. They have these hired sheepdogs, and they will come up behind the herd, and the dogs know how to push the sheep in the right direction. But that's not how they shepherd, even to this day in the Middle East. They're not driven from behind, rather, they're led from the front. The shepherd will speak, and the sheep know the shepherd's voice, and they follow. Guys, what a beautiful picture of what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. That authentic followers of Jesus Christ, they listen, hear, and believe the words of Jesus. This is it. Like, this is the thing that sets us apart from everyone else. That the decision to be a follower of Jesus is the decision that I no longer lead, I follow. That I no longer get to be the one that determines whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it, however I want to do it. Yet my job isn't to figure out the direction, it's to hear, listen, and believe the voice and the direction of the shepherd. And this applies to every area of our lives. We listen. Where should I go to college? How do I handle this conflict at work? Should I reconcile with this person who's hurt me? We're listening. How do I spend my money? What are my priorities? Which freedoms do I indulge in, and which freedoms do I relinquish? Which friendships do I need to foster and care for, and which ones do I need to let die? Am I forgiven? Am I worthy? Am I loved? We're continually listening for the voice of the shepherd. And the beautiful part about following Jesus is that he speaks to us in a myriad of ways. The first way he speaks to us is through his word. I get so frustrated sometimes with Christians because they're like, well, God never speaks to me. It's like, you never open up your Bible, dude. It's alive. It's alive. Your Bible, it will divide soul, spirit, joint, marrow. It will judge. Your Bible will judge the thoughts and the attitudes of your heart. That's incredible. That God, he's longing to speak to us, but yet we don't go to the source. He'll speak to you in the quiet place. He'll start speaking to you sometimes when you stop speaking and learn to sit and to just listen. It's a lost discipline in our culture. Prayer is talking. Prayer is filling the air. Biblical prayer is far more listening than it is speaking. To hear his voice. He's going to speak to you, hopefully through communicators on this stage, preaching his word. He speaks to me through music. He speaks to me through creation. He speaks to me through art, worship. He speaks to us through his spirit. He's always speaking. How many of us are listening? This is a defining character of those in the fold. That they can you discern the voice? There's so much noise around our lives. Are we able to discern the voice of the shepherd from the noise that we immerse and inundate ourselves in? This is what we do. This is how we're led. And I think it's so funny because what we do is we're just like these dumb sheep and we're like, rah, and we just like jump off a cliff and we get angry with God. And the shepherd's like, don't jump off the cliff. There's a cliff there. Rah, and we're just like so dumb. And we get angry with him. And he's like, I'm speaking to you the whole time. But this is what we do. That followers of Jesus, they listen, they hear, and they believe the words of Jesus. Verse 6, Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, don't miss this, because Jesus is about to drop a bitter pill right here. He says, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. That whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. Guys, do you understand the weight of what he has just said? By today's standards, this statement is remarkably offensive. This statement is not politically correct. It's not inclusive. Not everyone gets the spiritual trophy. Jesus has said unapologetically, I am the only gate. Do you want to enter into the kingdom of heaven? Do you want to enter into the family, enter into the fold? It only happens through me. He has essentially said every thought that mankind has ever had about how to be with God outside of me is wrong. That he's not just a nice man. That he's not just this moral teacher. That he's not just a philosopher. He's saying, I am the one and only way. Only through me. That your successful life can't save you. That your enlightenment can't save you. That your immense popularity cannot save you. Your good deeds, you going down to the homeless shelter and feeding chili, even though it's a great thing to do and you should do it, will not save you. Limitless acts of good deeds, your morality, none of it. It's only through the gate. And listen to what he says next, because I think you've heard it before. Verse 10, he says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And some of you are like, yeah, I know this verse. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and the thief is. I spent my whole life thinking that's Satan, right? It's not. It's not who he's talking about. Because remember, we have to look back to understand. Pearls on a string. Who is he in an argument with? This is what Jesus is saying. This is what most Christians will never understand. We miss it. We miss this verse. He's saying that the enemy, the thief, who wants to steal your joy, who wants to kill your purpose, who wants to destroy your life. Now, it's satanic. It's influenced by Satan, but here it is. That enemy are the leaders and the influences in your life that will lead you away from the gospel of grace towards dead religion and the law. That is the enemy. It's those voices and those influences that every day will come against you, and they'll try to whisper into your ear, you're not loved yet. So keep striving. Keep earning. It's those voices that through Christ, you're not righteous yet. So then be self-righteous. It's the lies that say, I'm sorry, your sin, they're fixable, but you're too much. You're too far gone. It's this temptation. The thief is the temptation to just live your life by rules. Because rules are easy, and we can compartmentalize them, and they're clean, and they're infinitely scalable instead of living by grace. It's the temptation to let fear dictate every decision that you will make and not be led by faith. And these are the enemies that John is showing us will try their best to infiltrate the church, to infiltrate the fold. And if they get in, they will contaminate the gospel and they will destroy everything. This is the enemy that will steal, kill, and destroy. But are you ready for some good news this morning? Verse 11. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. Whew. Isn't that a relief? I am the good shepherd. It's one of the 7 I am statements that he will make about himself in the Gospel of John. And then Jesus will go on and he'll give us the criteria of what it takes to be a good shepherd. And come to find out, it's only one thing. He says the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. When the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it, the man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. How many of you know it's pretty easy to differentiate the employee of a business versus the owner of a business? How many know that? You can spot him a mile away, right? Like the gal who's like scrubbing the countertops and getting all the fingerprints off the windows and keeping the door shut so the cold air doesn't escape. She owns the business. But the dude who's like, I might take off and a little bit 15:30 early today. The guy who's like, someone else will clean it up. That guy's just an employee. And I know this because I have been a really bad employee at times in my life. Anyone else honest enough to admit that you've been a bad employee before? Yeah, okay. About 7 honest people in the room. The rest of you are just liars. And a certain story came to mind this week. It was my very first job. I was 15 years old, and I got a job working at the concession stands. I won't tell you which ones, and you'll know why at the end of this story. So I was working at the concession stand, and I was opening up one of those giant tin tubs of nacho cheese. In fact, sometimes I think God called me into ministry as a punishment for some of the things I did during my time at the concession stand. So I opened up this tub of nacho cheese, and it was like this old, kind of rusty can opener. It never really fully opened up the lids, and so you could kind of peel them back. So I was attempting to pull the can, and my hand slipped, and it sliced my thumb really bad. Still to this day, I have a scar across my thumb. And I don't know if anyone else shares this bad habit, but anytime I cut my finger, there's like this knee-jerk reaction that happens, and I just do this. Ah! Okay? So here we are. We're inside of the concession stand. I'm shaking my bloody hand, and blood spatter is just going everywhere. It's all over the walls. It's all over the counter. It's all over the candy bars, and some of it happened to fall inside of the nacho cheese. So here I am, and now I find myself in a bit of an ethical dilemma. And I've got all kinds of thoughts storming through in my 15-year-old brain. And here's the thought that won. It sure would be a waste to throw away this nacho cheese. So what do? I just stir up that blood in the nacho cheese, serve it, and no one's the wiser. Some of you will never eat nachos for the rest of your lives. You'll live longer. You're welcome, okay? Here's the point of the story. Owners don't do that. You ready for the greatest quote? Owners don't stir the blood into the nacho cheese. Owners don't cut corners. Owners go the extra mile, right? When the wolf shows up, the hired hand, when he understands that my life is in jeopardy, he leaves. He has no skin in the game, but not the owner, not the good shepherd. The good shepherd sticks around. The good shepherd will risk everything. The good shepherd will be willing to sacrifice even at the cost of their own lives. Just so you know, this is a brilliant picture of what Christian leadership looks like. And I'm not talking about the 12 people who happen to work at this church. For any of you who have the courage to accept the call to be a leader here, to be a discipler of other people, this is the picture. To be under shepherds, under Christ, it's you standing between a wolf and the people that you lead. In order to pick up your cross and lead in the church, all of these fantasies you had, fantasies of a life of leisure and pleasure, devoid of pain and suffering, you have to kill those. Because the call to lead is the call to suffer. The fantasies you had about a life of comfort and ease, with all kinds of free time, no stress, you've got to crucify those thoughts, because now your life is no longer about you, it's about the flock. The life of leadership is a life of suffering, and it's not easy, but it's so worth it. It's not stress-free, but it's so meaningful. And this is what God is calling some of you to. We have to make those decisions. Or am I willing? Am I the employee that I'll do just enough, but once thing gets hard, I'm out? Or am I the person that's going to stick it out, and I'll bleed, and I'll persevere? And here's the thing, all of us, none of us are the shepherds of the church. Myself, the staff, anyone who leads, we're just under shepherds under Christ. He's the true lead. He's the true leader of this church. And all of us as these under shepherds, we pale in comparison to the good shepherd, because not only would he lay down his life, he would offer up life. A life that's fully alive. This is what he does. He's going to show us just that. Verse 14. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen, and I must bring them also. You want to know what's so amazing about verse 16? He's talking about us. Anyone in this room that's not Jewish, this is who he's talking about. If there's other people, I gotta go find them. Gotta seek them out, bring them in, welcome them into the fold. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. He lays down life, and then he gives life. He loses and gives. It's amazing. The reason my Father loves me is I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down and the authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. So as we prepare to take communion this morning, here's the reality that we are sheep, horribly and desperately in need of a good shepherd. And there are wolves everywhere. There are thieves and robbers attempting to penetrate this pen with lies, deceit, dead religion, legalism, the law. But we have a good shepherd who stands at the gate. And he's a shepherd that's speaking to us, and he's leading us. And he lays down his life for his sheep. I heard a story a couple weeks ago that I felt like just somewhat, to a small degree, encapsulated the love of the Father. All of us know about the tragedy that took place in Uvalde, Texas. it's so heart-wrenching and it's devastating. But there was this beautiful moment that happened even in the midst of the darkness. Maybe you've heard it. It was about a gal named Angeli Gomez. And Angeli Gomez was a mother with 2 children at Uvalde. And she was a farm worker. She had been at the school earlier that day for some kind of graduation ceremony, drove back to the farm. It was when she arrived at her farm, she realized she heard the news of the active shooter, got back in her vehicle and drove 40 miles to the school. There's some debate and controversy as to whether this took place. Some say that she was even handcuffed because she was causing such a scene in desperation, attempting to break into the school to rescue her children. Over a series of events, she was eventually freed, somehow found a way, and in the middle of an active shooting, broke into the school. And she described with gunshots echoing in the hallways, found not one, but went to the classrooms of both of her children and was able to rescue them from the school so they did not become one of the 21 people that would tragically lose their lives. And for some of us as parents, we're just kind of like, yeah, of course she would. Like, this is what a parent does. And to a small degree, it just taps into this immense, beautiful love that the shepherd has for us. He wouldn't be willing just to go 40 miles, but he would leave heaven and come to earth. He wouldn't just go into a school, he would go to the cross. He wouldn't just rescue us out of a classroom, he would rescue us from addiction, generational curses, bondage, lies, deceit. He would rescue us not just from a school, but he would rescue us into the kingdom of heaven. This is the shepherd that we serve. And so this morning as we take communion, I pray that this wouldn't just be another moment. As we've implemented this beautiful discipline into our church, I pray it just doesn't become routine. May it never become normal, but would we once again at just a new level, a new glimpse, would we catch a new reflection of what it means that our good shepherd's body was crushed for us? That his blood would be shed because he would protect the gate at all cost. Let's take communion together.